Thanks for checking out this review video. So this is for the Creepshow episode of Season 3, Number 4, and that is coming to Shudder on Thursday, October 14th. And because this review is coming out before that, this is a no-spoiler review. I can't even give a little synopsis because they're short stories about like 20 minutes apiece. That would ruin a lot just to give you a little synopsis. Plus, Shudder doesn't want people doing that anyway, so not going to do it. I will say there is a bit of a departure, a little bit of a departure from the last few episodes of the season where the creep shows up in the beginning with him doing a little something in animation, which is an okay animation style. I'm fine with it. It's very comic booky. So I know in past reviews for other episodes for this season, I've had this kind of issue of like, where's the creep? I want more of the creep. That's still at play here. When I first saw that there was a intro portion with the creep, I was like, oh, maybe we're going to get more of the creep in this one for some reason. But no, it's just the intro, and then he doesn't show up again, really, except in, stationary in amongst some comic book panels at certain points. So still, I think this is maybe a budgetary thing where they're trying to save more money by, putting less towards the animations and more towards the stories. That's fine with me, I guess, but I kind of just really miss having more of the creep. I'm just saying. So anyway, the first story for episode 4 of season 3 is Stranger Sings. This one's directed by Carlin, who also did films Soulmate, Tales of Halloween, one of the portions of Tales of Halloween, some episodes of The Haunting of Bly Manor, and the Creepshow story Dead and Breakfast. Now, I didn't like Dead and Breakfast, but that was mainly a story thing. I think that Carolyn's directing is good, and her directing is good in this story in Stranger Things. You actually notice the directing and the cinematography, which is a good thing, because a lot of the times with these stories you don't really notice it, other than like Joe Lynch done stories. You definitely notice those. So the better directors, the more interesting directors, the ones who pick interesting shots, really keep the camera work moving, those are the ones you really acknowledge, and the ones you're like, I think the directing and the cinematography is good here. And Carolyn did a good job with that. I really liked her style in this. The story was written by Jordana Arkin. Now, she had written some episodes, or a bunch of episodes, of Saved by the Bell, the New Class, which I'm going to admit I had watched some of that when it was out. Significant Others, which is a show I'm not familiar with. Project MC Squared, also not familiar with, and Star versus the Forces of Evil, also not familiar with. For all of those series, she did multiple episodes, but then she had a lot of like onesies, twosies of other shows, for a long time. Very long career in writing stuff like that. There are no big names in this at all, like no recognizable names. The acting is serviceable. Some actors are better than other actors in this one, but it all just kind of feels like middle of the road, where you're just like, it will get the job done for the most part. I do think the person, well, I'm not going to go into it. I was going to point out a specific person who did well, but it would have to be by character name, and I just don't want to, I'm not going to go down that road of, potentially saying things I shouldn't, as far as spoiler. There is an odd cut that happens in this that I really noticed that kind of really took me aback. It's a cut that happens when the camera is kind of like moving around something, and it gets cut before the movement's done. And it's really weird. It feels really odd because it felt like the camera was trying to move to get that whole thing in focus, like in the frame and in focus, and it stops and it cuts to something else before that happens. So it's just this really odd cut. So I don't know if it's something the editor did or if that was planned, but it looked weird and it really caught me off guard. You do notice the directing and camera work, like I was saying, quite good. One character's reaction to something very big in the story is severely out of whack. And that's kind of one of the issues with the writing for the script for this one, is that character reactions don't feel real. They don't feel genuine. And the acting level was also not there to like really sell it, to like bring enough to the characters to kind of overcome that type of stuff. So unfortunately, there are some things that you're going to be like, huh? That characters say or do where you're just like, that doesn't seem right. That seems weird. Like I said, this one, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you watch it, this one really big thing that happens with a character, and their reaction is very out of whack. And it's not for any good reason. It's just, it was the writing. I was just like, I don't get that at all. Nice integration of the comic panels in this one that are used to tell backstory. Now, usually they're doing that to kind of, save more money because they don't want to have to do, practical effects or do extra shots, and that's fine. It works really well because of the history of comics being integrated into Creepshow stuff, so it works well. So I like the way they did it, but well, actually, in this one, they've had a tendency to kind of move too fast when there's actually text that you want to read amongst the panels, and that does happen with the second story. But for this one, there wasn't any dialogue or anything written in the panels, so it was fine to just like look at the pictures. So that's the way it should be done, moving at that pace. That's fine. So it was done well in this story. There are some funny lines of dialogue. I did appreciate how the dialogue's written. The character reactions are problems, and overall the story's okay-ish. But the dialogue, the way dialogue's written, you can tell that Arkin has a good flair for dialogue writing. So those are appreciated. And, humor is always appreciated in these Creepshow stories. The story uses something from very old lore, which hasn't actually been used a whole lot. So I would say big kudos for using something that's not used a ton, that people really could mine a lot more. It's one of those ones that you have a tendency to kind of forget about. And then once someone does a story with it, you're like, oh yeah, that's a very old story. And why is there not a whole lot else out there like this? So yeah, I mean, points to Arkin for incorporating that. There are things you feel need addressed that do get ignored by the characters, and that feels really, really weird. It does feel like there are other aspects of the story that should have happened, that should have been addressed within it, and it's just ignored. Just like the writer ignored it, the characters are ignoring like very important aspects of this whole storyline, and it just feels unfinished, and it feels like it's not fleshed out enough. Maybe this is closer to a rough draft than it should have been as a script. That's just kind of how it feels. But good concept. Like I said, there are plenty of things I actually did like about it, including the dialogue and the directing and cinematography. So I'm going to give it a 2.5-star rating as a Creepshow story because I really did feel very in the middle about it. Things I liked, things I didn't like. So the next one was Meter Reader. Well, the next one, the last one of the episode, Meter Reader. Now, this one is directed by Joe Lynch. Now, if you remember the last time for one of these reviews, I covered one of the Joe Lynch stories. I said that I feel like Joe Lynch should be the one directing every single one of these stories. No change. Like after watching this, I still feel that way. Yes, Axel Carlin did a really good job, but Joe Hill did a phenomenal job. Like, when I was saying that Axel Carlin, like, you recognize that the directing and cinematography is good. With Joe Lynch, you recognize that the directing and cinematography is very good. He's bringing a lot of inspiration and a lot of style to his stories, and it's visually pleasing, and that really does help for making up for things like the acting that's not the best, or some issues, plot hole-wise with stories, or if the story's not that interesting, or if the dialogue's not that the best written. I'm not saying that for this particular story, but I'm just saying in those instances, really good directing can help cover those things up to a degree. At least grab the attention of the viewer in a different way. And Joe Lynch really has done that. Like, he's been great. So if you're not that familiar with Joe Lynch, he's done Wrong Turn 2, Dead End, Chillerama, Knights of Badassdom, Mayhem, and then the Creepshow stories he's done are The Right Snuff, Pipe Screams, and Familiar. Familiar was the one from season 3. The script was written by John Esposito, who's also written scripts for Graveyard Shift, Tale of the Mummy, The Walking Dead webisodes, which I didn't know for a long time was a thing. And the Creepshow stories he's written are Model Kid, Night of the Paw, Within the Walls of Madness, and Skeletons in the Closet. So he's written some good scripts. He's definitely written good scripts for Creepshow, in my opinion. No big stars in this one. I think the closest big star is Jonathan Scheck, I think is how you say the last name. It's Scheaech. I think it's Scheck is how it's said. Jonathan Scheck, you'll kind of recognize him to be like, I know I've seen that dude and stuff before, But I'll tell you, he was in some of the ones you may recognize. He's in the movie Quarantine, which was a remake of Wreck. And he was in Laid to Rest. He was also in the second Laid to Rest, so you might know him from those. So this particular story starts with comic panels with text, but moves too fast. It's good to set it up, having the backstory done that way, and that's fine. Slow it down. Slow down the panels. If there's text there, it leads the audience to believe you want us to read that. You got to slow it down. Maybe it's a situation where I'm just too slow of a reader, but I really feel like the pace that they're moving, you have to be a really fast reader to get that done. I know when I complained about this before for another episode for this season, someone else had commented and said, yeah, I do feel like maybe I'm a slower reader, and I couldn't read any of that. It definitely moved too fast for me. So, just slow it down. Not everyone's a super fast reader. But I do like the whole starting with the comic panels for taking care of the backstory. There is an interesting color palette used in this, at least initially in it, which is very striking to start the film. And that's one of those things, again, that, I come back to Joe Lynch's directing on this. It's interesting. It grabs your attention. It's something different. It's visually appealing. And I just love those types of touches to the stories. Some people who have done stories for these Creepshow episodes, they just kind of approach it as kind of like let's just do basic directing. Joe Lynch is doing different. He's kind of like, I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm going to make this look really cool. And he does. Again, Lynch's directing stands out. Yeah, I already said that. The story is well-trodden material. It's kind of an older-ish story, but the setting that they chose for it makes it interesting. Something different. It also plays to current times. Something globally that's going on. It does kind of play to that. So it's easier to connect with, honestly. It also, for that reason, is a slight bit uncomfortable. At least it felt a little bit uncomfortable for me for that reason. I know not everyone's going to feel that way. That's just a personal thing for me, but that's good. Like when horror films make you uncomfortable, like that's part of the point of horror films, is to kind of face that stuff head on and, yeah, deal with it, because that's horror films, man. The acting isn't the greatest. The acting is... When I said it was serviceable for Stranger Things, for the most part, it is less than serviceable for this one. Unfortunately, except for Jonathan Check. He did an outstanding job. He was wonderful. I loved his character. I just wanted to see more of his character. I honestly just wanted it to be his character and then nobody else talking for the most part. There is a secondary character, though, who actually does a solid enough job, but everyone else in it, not the greatest. The story feels like it had a lot more potential, but it was constrained way too much by a short runtime, unfortunately. This is another one of those where if they were to consider doing more than 20 minutes for any of the stories, I think this would be a good candidate for that. This one you could add so much to. There's so much potential there. I mean, this could even be a feature length, to be honest. And I'd be down to see a feature length of this in the future. Maybe that's something that Joe Lynch could work on, make happen. I don't know. And this did have a good ending. I really did enjoy the ending of it. It ends on this kind of like cool, fun note that makes you want more of it. So, further going to the whole, I think there's a lot of potential with this story there. So anyway, out of five stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give this a very solid 3.5-star rating. I did quite enjoy this one. So that is my review of Creepshow Episode 4 for Season 3. Would love to know your opinions on it when you see it on October 14th or after. You can come back here, put some comments down there, and we can talk spoilers. At that point, when you've seen it, talk spoilers in the comments, so everyone should just know that. And let's get nerdy about it. Let's enjoy talking about this stuff. Do me a quick favor, though. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you have already, you are awesome, and thank you very much. If you haven't, it is quick, it is painless, it costs you $0, and it's your way to say thank you to me, because you're not paying me. No one's paying me, actually, to do this. I'm just kind of doing this for, creative outlet and to, building nerdy horror community here. People I can get nerdy with about horror. So if you could just pay me back by subscribing, that would be great. Also, hit the notification bell button if you want to know whenever I'm putting up new videos, because I don't just do these no spoiler reviews. I do very deep analysis spoiler-filled reviews of older films. I also do some unboxings here or there, like opinion videos, bunch of stuff going on. But regardless, I thank you very much for taking your time to watch this, and until next time, keep it brutal.